Howdy, all. We are prepared to talk about some hockey today, but since we are opening the World Series tonight in Kansas City between the New York Mets and the Kansas City Royals, and all of us consider ourselves baseball fans and aficionados, I figured we should talk a little bit about the World Series. And I think I can tell by Russ, the hat that Russ is wearing. Yep, there you go. Who he'll be rooting for, but. Russ, I think this is going to be a really interesting series. I think it's going to be close. I heard somebody say yesterday, I think it was John Paul Morosi.
Love JP.
Yeah, who said that in the last 9 World Series, the team that had the longest layoff, 8 times the team that had the longest layoff of the 9, that team lost. The only one that didn't was the Philadelphia Phillies in 2008. Now that's you can find stats like that for either side, but
I mean it's not like the Royals had a day off. They've had a solid 4 or 5 days off too. So I think that kind of evens out.
Well,
I'm not even worried about that. I think I did a show yesterday, and I think resetting the rotation and giving the Mets younger pitchers a blow, and then figuring out it's better to use DeGrom in Game 2 will all benefit the Mets. So I'm not worried about that stat. I'm not. I actually was on a show with a guy who's a coach, and he manages guys, and he also gets guys to the major leagues. He went into that show picking the Royals. He went out of that show picking the Mets. He actually did. I swayed him on a few things. The one thing he told me that I felt interesting was when you're at bat, there's an 11-second pitch recognition thing that goes on in your mind, and if you could get used to a pitcher's movement and rhythm, that's how a batter can lock in. But I told him, and he didn't realize this, that after Robles from the Mets started to use the quick pitch, so did all the starters. And so now, even if you're a team that likes to hit the first pitch or likes to run on the first pitch, or the Mets have that quick pitch now that they're using. And they're not going to use it a lot, but they'll use it, and that sort of keeps them uneasy. And I will tell you this. I just did an article. I just posted on Sportsology this minute from a place called Wallet Hub, and they break down all the numbers. And there's a couple of interesting ones. The Mets basically are paying $1.1 million per win, where the Royals are paying $1.17. So the Mets are doing it at their price, right? We all know that.
Yeah, but that's
Well, I mean, it's a $99.7 million payroll, and it's based on the net worth of both teams. That's how they do it.
It's like a good hockey team getting a lot out of guys on ELCs.
Yeah, well, and there is that fact. And look, and Bonilla's on there too. I mean, Bobby Bonilla's 20-year deal is on there too. But it is kind of interesting that most of the years, the team that has the higher payroll wins. We'll see what happens this year. The ad revenue will be, last year was $257 million. But that's because it went to 7. Every time it goes over Game 4, from 4 to 7, it's an extra $43 million to the network. So just so if people ever wondered, give them an idea of what it's worth, that's what it's worth when there isn't a sweep. So there's that fact too. It's kind of interesting. People can go read it, Sportsology. At the end of the day, I still say Mets in 6. I don't think the Mets can win a Game 7 there. It's just too raucous and crazy. And I think the way the Mets have set up their rotation, they can win in 6.
Now they're going Harvey 1-5.
Yeah.
DeGrom 2-6.
Mets will be in there.
Syndergaard 3-7 probably. And
I don't know about that. I think Syndergaard 3 and then we'll see for 7. I don't. If there's a 7, we'll see. I don't think they're planning on throwing Syndergaard twice because you never know what they might do with him, and they're going to throw Mats once. But he'll only go 85 pitches.
Well, I know Volquez is going tonight, so I assume that means Volquez 1-5 for the Royals. I haven't seen the rest of the rotation, but I'm assuming Cueto would be 2-6, and then, who would the other one be? I'm trying to think of the other. Ventura. Yeah. So, and then probably the old ex-Met Chris Young is probably the Game 4 starter.
Chris Young would be Lester Patrick. His wife Elizabeth is from the Patrick family. Lynn Patrick's her grandfather. Lester Patrick's her great-grandfather. Certainly the Canadian hockey crowd like Chris Young.
Dan, what do you think? I mean, I have my
Out of respect to the Royals, the fact that they're a really talented team. With that being said, I don't think their pitching's good enough. I don't think their pitching scares anyone. The Mets just beat up really good rotations with the Dodgers and the Cubs.
Mhm.
I don't think they can. I just don't think the Royals can match this Mets pitching staff. Mets in 5.
Yeah, okay. I don't think that the Royals starters come even close to matching the Mets, not in the slightest. But I think the bullpen blows away the Mets. The Mets bullpen is Familia, and that's it. I mean, I think they have a couple other guys who are decent. I mean, I think Clippard is okay.
Royals bullpen's not what it was last year, and with the fact that these starters are going 7 and 8 innings a start,
Yeah, I mean,
so many games have been starter to Familia. If that continues, that's going to be really tough for the Royals.
Well, I mean, I also
That's what they're hoping to do. And the thing is, Familia is getting a lot of 6-out saves now. But here's the thing: Familia's allowed 2 base runners. That's it in the entire playoffs, and one of them was an error by Lucas Duda, even though they awarded a base hit. That's it. He's the most unhittable closer in these playoffs. Wade Davis aside, he doesn't even come close to Familia, to be honest.
Yeah, and Herrera is a really good 6th, 7th inning guy. And honestly, if I was Ned Yost, I would probably quit as a manager because Ned Yost, I think, is a terrible manager. So I think Terry Collins will probably win that battle.
The Royals got to play a lot of small ball. Every time they're on base, they got to try and run because they're not going to be on base a ton.
Right, but they have they have the speed to do that. I mean, guys like Escobar and Kane, they could get underneath the skin of the Mets.
Sure.
Mets rotation, and I think what it's going to come down to is the fact that you have the Royals team now that's in the World Series the 2nd year in a row. This is not a new thing to them. Guys like Hosmer and Moutsakis and Kane, they played pretty well in a first World Series last year, and I sort of think they're sort of hardened veterans now. This is a new thing for a lot of the Mets players. I mean, some of them have seen some,
saw a little, and Uribe is a last-minute decision. He might be in there. If he is, he's seen it. Here's the other thing: the Mets do have a fairly young team, but so did the Cubs. The Cubs choked, and the Mets youngsters didn't. Right. And so I think the fact that they didn't and they moved on, I think now you could probably wipe away that they haven't been there thing because now they have been there.
And the other thing I think is a question mark, and I know he got a cortisone shot, and I know he's going to be in the lineup, but how serious this shoulder thing is with Cespedes. If it's as serious as what happened with Tulowitzki, where Tulowitzki honestly was a 0 offensively until the last couple games of the series against the Royals because he came back from that shoulder problem that he had. If that's the case, I mean, we're talking about a small window here, Russ. We're talking about less than 2 weeks. I mean, if he's
taking batting practice, it's not like Rusty Staub in '73 where he's going to throw underhand, so it's not that serious. So I think he'll still be able to hit. The one that's worrisome, and Dan probably knows this, is the Curtis Granderson thumb injury that's sort of being concealed because as a leadoff hitter and a guy who is basically a power hitter, he doesn't get a lot of other hits. That's the one that worries me a bit more, to be honest.
Right, and they'll probably be throwing inside on him a lot. That'll jam him up, and that'll affect his thumb injury even more. Royals in 6. I think it could go 7 games, and if it does go 7 games, it's anybody's game, as we saw last year with San Francisco and Kansas City. So it's going to be entertaining. I just know that certain people in Toronto were wishing that this was going to be Blue Jays and Mets, and now all they have to pay attention to is the Maple Leafs for the next few years. So, let's start the show. Dan, you lead it off, okay? All right. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Tuesday, October 27th. 2015.
I'm Dan Petru.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Gentlemen, there were some interesting games last night. We'll start off with the game at the United Center in Chicago between the rematch of the Western Conference Final last year, but these teams are remarkably different than the 2 teams that met in the playoffs. The Chicago Blackhawks, in terms of the roster, has had a dramatic changeover, and the injury to Duncan Keith has affected that team. But they did win 2 consecutive 1-0 overtime, 3-on-3 overtime games against the 2 teams that they beat for the Western Conference Final and for the Stanley Cup. at the United Center. They beat Tampa on a Jonathan Taves goal early in the overtime, and then last night they beat Anaheim same way. I think it was 51 seconds in. Jonathan Taves with another goal past Frederik Andersen. Russ, I looked at the breakdown of the ice time last night to see how Joel Quenneville was sort of compensating for the loss of Keith. You had Seabrook playing 27 minutes, Jarmelson playing 25, and surprisingly, he was going more with Trevor Van Riemsdyk and Svedberg than with more experienced David Rundblad and Trevor Daley. Svedberg had 19 minutes. Van Riemsdyk had almost 21 minutes. A little surprising there.
Well, Rundblad could be a turnover guy, and I think they wanted to take that out of it as the game stayed tighter. You don't really want Rundblad touching the puck too much. So I think it was a function of that. With the Blackhawks being down like this and Anaheim not being able to solve them and being shut out 5 out of the last 8 games, they had a lot of shots on goal. They had no finish. Right. The problem that I saw, there's a twofold problem. The first one was when Frederik Andersen kicked the net out on purpose on a guaranteed goal, right? And then for anybody that doesn't think it was guaranteed, when they went back to the cameras while they were reviewing the play and he was smiling as he was drinking the water, he knew that this was not going to be overturned because unless there's goalie interference, there's no way for them to overturn it on the ice, which is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous because it was on purpose, right? So in a way, they sort of got what they deserved, Anaheim, in that game because eventually Jonathan Taves gets the winner. The funny thing is Anaheim doesn't seem like a rudderless ship, right, where you would say, well, you know, they're not playing hard for the coach.
No, we'll talk about that team next. Go ahead.
They are, but the problem is that I still don't see any fire on Anaheim. I see a lot of robotic play, and I think that's why their top guys are not scoring the way they should. And based on what I saw, I definitely would take Bruce Boudreau out of it. I would because he's not exuding any confidence from behind the bench. He's really not. And I think at some point, if they don't win in another 2 or 3 games, it's just going to get worse. It's going to snowball.
Yeah, and it gets worse for them tonight in Dallas on Stars, which is a pretty challenging game. Dan, I mean, looking at Chicago, the thing is like without Keith, it looks like they're trying to play like a very close to the vest type of game. You know, don't take a lot of chances. In the last couple games, get to overtime, and then in overtime, the first shift they put out Kane, Taves, and Seabrook, and won on the first shift both times. So that's formula. But we're going to talk more about Anaheim. I agree with Russ. I think. They may not have quit on Boudreau last night, but they're 1-5-2. They've scored 6 goals. The big guys aren't scoring. Something has to happen pretty quick, and if they lose to Dallas, I mean, I think Boudreau's done. But my question here is, the 2 main candidates for replacing him are Trent Yawney, an assistant coach, and Paul McLean, who are in the locker room with Bruce Boudreau. How much of a change is it going to be if they hire one of those 2 guys?
That's the thing. That's the thing you have to consider. What is the alternative if you fire Boudreau? I mean, during the offseason, there were candidates, but right now there's not much out there besides what you have internally, unless there's somebody waiting in the wings that we don't know about. I mean, Tortorella's snatched up. I don't really know of any other coaches out there right now that you can bring in. Is it the same voice if you get rid of Boudreau too? I don't know if this necessarily is all on the coaching staff. You can only do so much. I think at some point you got to shake up the lines. Maybe you scratch a couple of players, or maybe you make a trade. Obviously, they brought some players in over the offseason that have not worked out. Bieksa, I know he got hurt, but he looks like he's aged quite a bit. Hagelin hasn't provided the spark that they've hoped for. But at the end of the day, you have to look at Kessler and Perry and Getzlaff and say, what is wrong with you guys? You're not 37 years old. I just don't get it. All of a sudden, it looks like I just don't understand. They haven't gotten that old. But at the same time, they look like they're playing passionless hockey without any desperation. And if they continue this, they're going to bury themselves in the Western Conference.
No, there's one thing, and Dan, you've seen this, and I've seen this with teams. if you bring in McLean, it's not so much the different voice, but the players then having to look themselves in the mirror and saying, we got our coach fired.
Right.
And that sometimes gets them going.
True.
Well,
I think they're very close to being in a dangerous position because if you look at their division right now, yes, we'll talk about the Flames in a moment. My God. But besides that, the Kings are riding the ship. The Sharks should be fine. If they keep this up, they're going to bury themselves very quickly and be playing, catch-up hockey the entire season with no margin for error. And let's give credit to Arizona; they are significantly better than any of us thought they would be.
Well, we'll get to that one in a second. The one thing I'll say is that you mentioned Bieksa. I know that they'd been using Bieksa a lot more than a lot of people expected them to. I mean, I thought he was going to be a complimentary, like maybe second pairing, maybe even third pairing guy, and they'd been playing him over 20 minutes a night. But
they missed Boschman a lot.
Yeah, right, exactly. But last night they used Vatanen 23 minutes, Lindholm 26 minutes, and Fowler 23 minutes. So it looks like Boudreau realize that Bieksa can't handle 20+ minutes anymore. But I mean, the name that's been out there, and we mentioned it yesterday, has been Randy Carlyle as the external candidate. The problem is that with Tortorella, in the case of Tortorella, his contract with Vancouver meant that Vancouver gets a second-round pick. Carlyle is still under contract to Toronto for the rest of the season, and unless the Leafs waived it, which I don't think they would, they would have to pay a second-round pick to Carlyle, which I think means they're going to go with the internal candidate because they don't want to give up a draft pick. But honestly, I think you need a taskmaster. I don't think McLean is the answer. I think Carlyle at least has some familiarity with that team. He won a Stanley Cup with that organization a few years ago, and it's not unprecedented where a guy like Paul Maurice goes back to Carolina, where Carlyle goes back to the organization he used to be with. So I mean, we will see. But let's get to Calgary and the Islanders, that being held at the Barclays car dealership in Brooklyn. I mean, I'm sorry, I have to mention that because it's just so odd. I'm watching that game last night, and in the corner, the left corner of the ice, along the glass, I see a brand new SUV. I mean, is this a hockey arena or is this a car dealership? Dan, what is?
What am I supposed to say? I didn't put the car there.
Oh, I know, but
God, you sound like my Twitter feed. You sound like my feed. It's like it's my fault. I was told that those seats don't logistically work there, so that's why they decided to make some money off of advertising. That's a Barclays decision. That's not an Islanders decision.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of the decisions you're seeing that are pissing people off are not Islander decisions. They're Barclay decisions.
Okay, but first let's ask. It was
the team's good, so let's talk about that.
Yes, yeah. We'll talk about the team, but I wanted to bring up something that Russ brought up yesterday regarding Ryan Strome, who was a healthy scratch. Now, did he play yesterday?
He played yesterday.
Okay.
He played well.
But
he played well.
He played well. But was this a disciplinary thing?
No, he was the worst forward through 6 games. And if I was the coach, I probably would have strangled him. He was infuriating watching. You know what? He didn't look. It looked like he was channeling his inner Jason Blake, and I love Jason Blake. But it was over stick handle, and it's not so much the play in his own end, and it's not so much the play in the opponent's end, it's the play in the neutral zone. And he was a turnover machine in the neutral zone, and so was the captain. I love John Tavares. He's one of my favorite players. But when he's not going right, he's a turnover machine, especially at the opponent's blue line. And we all know what happens when you turn the puck over at the opponent's blue line. You're usually picking it up out of the back of your net. And this was now you can't bench Tavares, obviously. I was so annoyed with the two of them after the Columbus game, I probably would have yanked them off the power play for a little bit just to send the message. But I'm a lot tougher than apparently some of these coaches are, and I was yelled at for that too. But this was the opportunity for a teachable moment to say to Strome, look, it's not about your points. It's not about your points. 5 points in 8 games is fine. He's been fine offensively. I think there's room for improvement, but it's about your play that's leading to us picking the puck out of our back of the net. And it was a teachable moment, and I have absolutely no problem with it.
No, I think it makes sense. But I also pointed out yesterday he's on pace for less goals than last year, and he's got to pick that up too. They need secondary scoring on that team.
They have plenty of secondary scoring.
We'll see. We'll see how much. I think they're a good team. Don't get me wrong.
They scored 24 goals in 6 games.
That's fine, but he's still going to need to get around 17 to 20 goals too.
Which he can.
Yeah, right now he's not on. Right now he's on pace for a little less than that. So I think that's an issue too.
But if you look at Mike's friend, Mikhail Grabowski, if you're supplementing, okay, say maybe Strom only scores 15 instead of 20 this year, but it looks like Grabowski, if healthy, could easily put in 40-something points this year. And Josh Bailey's been outstanding so far this year. You can also maybe count on him, too.
Dan, I'm looking at my fictitious wristwatch, waiting for Grabowski's next concussion.
I know, I am too. But right now, he's been outstanding. In the line of Coulomb, whoever he's played with, most recently, last night he was playing with Lee and Nelson. Whoever he's playing with, they play in the opponent's end almost every time they're on the ice. He's been outstanding.
I'm shocked that they separated him from his running buddy, Mr. Kuhlman, because usually they play together wherever they are. But let's flip to the Calgary Flames, because right now this is a train wreck. I mean, first of all, Dougie Hamilton, I mean, the contract and the way he's played so far through the first couple weeks of the season. I mean, okay, he's 22 years old. He's got a lot of talent. We've seen what he could do when he was in Boston. I think he'll turn it around, at least for the Calgary Flames. I hope he'll turn it around. But he has been abysmal for the Flames so far. Go ahead.
Beyond I bought into the hype. I'm so mad at myself. I bought into this Flames hype, and my fantasy team hates the Calgary Flames right now because I have Giordano, Hamilton, and Monahan, whatever his name is. And I just can't. I saw this team Sunday live at MSG. I saw this team last night, and God, they need somebody that can stop the puck. Here's the problem: they're not playing great defensively. I thought Sunday they carried the play against the Rangers. The Rangers were sleepwalking through most of that game. But when push comes to shove, if the Flames make any mistakes right now, the puck's in the back of their net. They have not been great defensively, but there are times where it's like, my goodness, make a save. And they have absolutely no confidence in their end. No confidence whatsoever.
And you saw this in the old Islanders. When you have two goalies and no one's playing well, you've got nothing.
You have no goalies. They have no
goalies. And that's the problem is they never got an established goalie out of the gate this year, and I blame that on Hartley because you've got to let somebody play.
Can we give him a look?
Sorry?
How's Gillies doing? Can we give him a look at some point?
And they might have to. I mean,
they might have to.
You have to give somebody 4 or 5 games in a row and see what they have rather than continually rotating guys. You can't do that in this NHL unless you're winning. If you're winning and you're like the Montreal Canadiens, you can plug and play. You can't do it right now when your team is not playing good defense and they're not at 100. They're not at full strength defensively either.
Well,
for example, like when Hiller did make a great save on Sunday, it was a blind clear that went right to the point that got picked off. Everybody's standing in front of him, and he can't see the puck, and it's in the back of his net. And I thought he just like basically this snow angel of disgust in the crease. He was so mad.
Well, I think
a mess right now.
I think one of the things that and there's a number of things that are going wrong right now with Calgary, but one of the things is the absence of T.J. Brody, who was the defensive partner for Giordano, because he's absent. All the pairings are off. Yep. Right now Hamilton is not playing well. Maybe he's feeling the pressure of that big contract. They're not getting the offense that they expected out of guys like Hoodler and Monahan, who had really big years last year. I mean, everything is going wrong, but I think the core of it, you're right, is the goaltending. And I was going to bring this up later on regarding a number of teams right now. I mean, maybe, I don't know whether it can be solved via a trade. I think they just have to go with Hiller. I mean, they've already determined that Ramo was not the guy. They sent him down to the
A. was all over that one.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, either you go with Hiller or you go with Ordio and you go with him for 5 or 6 games and you let the chips fall where they may. And the thing is, if they don't start turning it around in the next couple weeks, they're going to, especially in the West, they're going to dig themselves such a hole that they're not going to be in playoff competition. So they're, and I think Anaheim is in a similar predicament. That's why they're going to have to make them.
Hey, Anaheim has goalies.
Well, right, but I'm saying is they're going to have to make some sort of change to switch things around in the next week or so, because if they don't do it, they're going to be so far behind they'll be chasing the playoff spot for the rest of the season, and it's an impossible thing to continue to chase. You expend so much energy chasing these teams and looking at the standings and seeing how far you are behind, and you have to win like 12 games in a row just to catch up. It seems like an impossibility.
this is a team that could do a little bit with puck possession. They were really good with that last year and were very pesky and hard to play against. They're no longer hard to play against, and I can't figure out, some look, injuries on the blue line shouldn't cause that. They still have a lot of talented forwards, and they're just out of sync when it comes to Calgary play that I sort of bought into as well. And if they don't get that back, then you might have to look at that coach as well, because Hartley's had some short runs in some places, and because all of a sudden, what else has changed there? But they got to get the goaltending right first.
They can't get the puck out of their net. They can't pass it out, and they can't send it out. The first passes are all behind everyone. They can't put 3 passes together, and everything right now is desperation. Get the puck out of your net, tip it at the red line to avoid icing, and then give up possession. They never have the puck.
The Islanders were steamrolling them there at the end. I mean,
right, and the Rangers maybe played 10 good minutes on Sunday, and that was enough.
And that's it. That's all they did. You're right.
Well, there are goaltenders who will be available. It's a question of, and we'll talk about this near the end of the show, is, our teams in the trading mode already, and I think they will be, but we'll talk about that later on. But let's get to the other game of the night, which was the one that I watched intently, which was the upstart Arizona Coyotes at the Air Canada Center to face the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I wish I could have found somebody to take my bet that Max Domi would score, but I didn't know he was going to score on his first shot at the Air Canada Center. Arizona, I'll tell you, Russ, they're not going to be a playoff team. They're not going to be close to the playoffs. But Max Domi, I think, is the real deal. I mean, he looks.
Oh yeah.
Pretty good. I didn't notice Duclair that much last night, but there's enough of a veteran base of players there with Hansel and Botker and Boyd Gordon and Doan. You have Ekman Larson there. Mike Smith last night played pretty decently. If Duclair and Doan,
how decently? It was 3-1 and it ended up being 4-3.
I mean, I don't think it was.
No, but so far this season he looks a hell of a lot better than he did.
He does look better so far. I give you that.
It wasn't Smith. I mean, one goal was a James Van Riemsdyk breakaway, and the other one was a Morgan Riley blast through a screen. So I didn't think it was Smith's fault that they closed the gap. The Leafs basically were asleep the first 40 minutes and then woke up in the third and put forth a good effort. But this is to me. This is symptomatic of the problem with the Leafs. They look like world beaters for segments of the game, and then either their goaltending ruins them or their special teams kill them. But they're playing better than they did last year, but they're doing what. This is right now. The grand design is working. They're playing better and they're losing.
They remind me, like I said, look. I've been through this the past 20 years, and when you have young, bad teams, they usually do just enough to lose. They look good for sections of the game, but when push comes to shove, when there's certain spots they cannot handle the other team putting pressure on them, they do just enough to lose.
Yeah, and I mean, you can tell, Russ.
I'm trying to kill a bug. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, well, we'll wait while.
I got it. Go ahead.
Assassinate a bee.
Jenna wanted to make sure she could see the kill.
Okay, there you go. You can tell, Russ, by the reaction of Babcock during the post-game press conference last night that he's starting to lose his patience. It's ironic. It started to happen, and he had mentioned, well, it's nice that we're sort of on the back pages right now while the Blue Jays are in the playoffs. He started to get a little more snippy on Saturday after the loss in Montreal, and now on Monday, was not pleased about his goaltending. Was pumping up Byron Frais, who he called up from the East Coast and American Hockey League, a guy who had never played an NHL game until Saturday, was basically saying this guy was better than half the forwards out there. He's pushing the buttons. The problem is that there's nothing there to push.
Right. No, I get that, but we talked about it, and there's going to be a frustration factor for him for this season and maybe next season, and that's going to be hard for him to deal with. We'll see. I mean, he may, he may have a sit-down powwow with the front office and demand more. Even
It's not happening.
No, I know. I hope he's comfortable sleeping on his bed of money because I don't know what he's expecting.
Well,
right.
no, see, this is the thing, and this is the thing. This was the first signal that I could be wrong. Maybe 3/4 of the season, in January and February they start doing something that the fan base will get miffed about. Bringing in players that will improve them in the short term, which I think is counterproductive. I don't think that that's going to happen, and I think the first signal of that was the call-up of Byron Frais. Byron Frais was leading the Marlies in goal scoring, three goals in 4 games. Byron Frais was loaned to the Leafs by an ECHL team last January. He made the American Hockey. He got signed to an AHL contract and then to an NHL contract over the summer, and he's the first call-up. So it wasn't William Nylander, it wasn't Kasperi Kapanen, it wasn't Connor Brown, it was Byron Frais, which tells me, Russ, if he's unhappy with guys like Peter Holland or Michael Grabner or any of these these one-year guys that they bring in, the guys they're calling up are not Kapanen and not Nylander. It's going to be Sam.
No.
Josh Levo.
That's not going to happen. But I'm telling you, there's going to be a moment where he is going to clash with the front office. And they may have to bring in some temporary help. They might have to, because I don't think Mike Babcock's going to put up with it for a whole season. I will be shocked if you get through a season and he's dead last and he's not totally at odds with everybody in that organization, because I think it's easy to talk that game where you say, yes, I understand it's going to be pain and everything. It's a different thing living it.
Well,
but there's a reward for being dead last this year.
Yeah.
It could help them more than how they can solve their team right now.
And not just the top pick. Not just it's this is I mean okay
coaches don't care about that. We know that.
I understand that.
But they
brought the wrong guy in, honestly.
Well, no. But that's the thing. They laid the groundwork. They told Babcock that they hated them.
It doesn't matter. It's like me telling you, hey Mike, I'm selling you this seat to the World Series. It's not the greatest view for $600, and you say, okay, that's fine, and you get there, and it's even a worse view than you thought. That's what's happening to Mike Babcock.
Yeah, you can't expect to bring in someone as proud as Babcock and just say, hey, we're going to suck, and sorry, we're going to suck. That's like giving Spielberg an iPhone and telling him to make a movie.
Right.
Well, I mean,
he would make a good movie, though.
He probably would, yes, but he would complain the whole time about it.
But I get what you're saying, but this is the reason why he got an 8-year deal, and this is why he got double the amount of money than any other NHL coach, because the Leafs are on this path, and if he starts raising a fit about it, I don't think it's going to matter, because I think this year and probably next year, this is. I called this year on a podcast that I did yesterday. I called this year an 82-game training camp, and that's what it is. They're trying to find out whether Nazem Kadri is a keeper, whether Jake Gardiner is a keeper. All these players, the players they brought in on 1 or 2 year deals. They're trying to find out whether these guys are part of the future or are assets to be traded. And I'm telling you right now that when this team starts to play a little better and they start to get the system, what's going to happen is some of those players are going to be moved out at the end of the year before the deadline, some of these rented players, and you're going to have players coming up from the AHL who are going to be learning the system all over again. So this team is going to finish in the bottom 3 or 4 in the league. And, because right now you look at the bottom of the standings, and teams like Calgary and teams like Anaheim are not going to finish at the bottom of the league. Teams like Buffalo and Toronto and Carolina and maybe Colorado, those teams are going to be at the bottom, but not. But I just think
Mike Babcock's not Casey Stengel though. Like he's not gonna be the darling of the media and put on a happy face to mask what's going on. So that's going to be a tough thing to deal with. It is.
Well, and I don't put any kind of seriousness in a sarcastic tweet. If I did, then everything I say is serious. But John Buccigross from ESPN on Twitter last night, when Arizona was leading 4-1, said, it appears that the plan to bring Austin Matthews and Steven Stamkos to Toronto is right on track. Honestly, I think that's, in a way, the plan. I mean, I don't know about Stamkos. We still don't know whether...
The Austin Matthews is a gamble. It's not a guarantee, as Buffalo knows. And this year, last year there was a bigger payoff.
Right.
Last year was like, hey, you don't get McDavid, you get Eichel. Now, I'm not telling you you're getting something bad this year, but you're not getting something at that level.
No.
No, you're still getting something good.
After Austin
Getting
Matthews,
something good.
I mean, after Austin Matthews, you could get Jacob Chikrin, you could get Matthew
Tkachuk. If it's one of those guys, hey, that's good.
Yeah.
They're still not Jack Eichel.
No.
But they're better than what they have in their organization.
And that's why this is going to take 2 to 3 years to turn around, because it's an exercise in accumulating top end assets.
I've been through it.
Yeah, and the Islanders are the proof. The Islanders are the proof. You need that linchpin guy like Tavares to build around. You need complementary players. Now, I don't know whether Marner is a guy you.
This is where Buccigrass goes wrong in that tweet, and obviously it's sarcastic. If you get Stamkos, the rebuilding is over because you're going to be trading a ton of assets to get him.
Oh, unless you're thinking he's going to be a free agent.
Exactly. And
they're not going to let that happen. Like, if they see that happening, they would sooner trade his rights at the draft if they went that long without signing him than letting him walk. That's not happening.
He's got a no-move clause. If he's bound and determined to go to free agency, he can go to free agency.
Yeah, but he won't do that. Stamkos will not screw the Tampa Bay Lightning. If it's just a matter of trading his rights, they'll do that at the draft. He will not block that.
Well, I mean, I think that's likely. I mean, because that's the type of guy that Stamkos is. But if
what are they getting for the rights? Maybe a late 1 or a 2?
Yeah, you would get a late first, and that's at least something.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, if it was Toronto, they would get Pittsburgh's first.
Right.
Yeah.
Something like that. Anyway, let's move on here. Interesting little note that came out in a story in the Hockey News regarding injured Sabres forward Evander Kane. Comes out. It was a piece by Ken Campbell, and Evander Kane apparently said he had requested a trade every offseason since he was drafted by Winnipeg. Russ, how long do you think it's going to be before he starts requesting trades from Buffalo?
Not that long. I told you I didn't think he'd be a good fit there. I told you that for all the people that were hoping that he is going to be like that perfect fit, he's not.
So where is a fit for him, I guess is the question.
I don't know if there is.
Yeah.
L.A., Chicago, New York, big cities.
They can't afford him.
Right.
They can't afford him, and nobody's been able to sort of harness him.
Right.
That's the problem, is harnessing Evander Kane, getting him to focus, getting him to not play reckless, getting him to live up to his capabilities. These are hard things to do.
Right. No one on the Jets could do that right now.
No. There's nobody. There really isn't anybody in their leadership group that could. You know, a guy like Jonathan Taves definitely could, but they don't have anything to give and they can't afford him. So you have to find that weird team that could do that. But I told you, Mike, I thought that this was risky beyond belief getting him, and for everybody that was sort of sitting and smiling in Buffalo like they pulled off something big, this is the downside of it.
Well,
but we really don't know what he is in Buffalo yet. He hasn't played that many games and he's hurt.
Yeah, and that's the thing. He played 5 games in Buffalo and really didn't make much of a.
Well, he had 2 goals disallowed.
Well, right, but yes, but I mean, he really did he didn't really make that much of a footprint until the game against Toronto last week when he bowled over Phaneuf and then scored the tying goal. I mean, that was sort of his coming out party. But then then he gets injured the couple games after that, and now he's out for 4 to 6 weeks. Now, one interesting thing, I saw a tweet from Jeremy Rutherford, the St. Louis Blues reporter, who was apparently, there was a press conference with Ken Hitchcock, and Ken Hitchcock was commenting about goaltending in the NHL, and in particular Carey Price. And this, Hitch says, the effect of Price is psychological. He's in people's heads. There's too much talk about him. It's approaching Dominic Hasek status. It's not good for the league when it gets like that because you're already down 1 or 2-0 before you play the game. Now, and I get that. I think that that's the case. I mean, you think that you're already at a disadvantage when the game starts because Price is so unbeatable. Which I don't think he's unbeatable. He's a great goaltender, but I don't think he's unbeatable. But if you look at the goaltending situation now, especially at the teams in the bottom 5 of the league, and we already talked a little bit about Calgary and their problems. Of those teams, Anaheim is the only one the goaltending is not a problem. The other ones, Bobrovsky has played horrifically in Columbus so far. Buffalo is in trouble right now because Leonard is hurt, and they have to go with Ullmark and Chad Johnson and Dan.
They had Makarov. They brought him up, and I guess he gave up 3 goals, and they're never going to use him.
Yeah, no, Dan, Russ. I was told, and I heard from one of the Sabres beat reporter that the Sabres organization do not consider Makarov a prospect. That Ullmark is their.
They should trade him then, because the guy could play goal.
Right. Yeah. They considered Nathan.
I like him better than Ullmark, actually.
Yeah. They consider Nathan Lewin and Makarov like roster fillers, and they consider Ullmark more the top prospect. And they know they have another Swedish goaltender. I think his name is Johansson, and they also have a NCAA goalie for Notre Dame.
Yeah, I think the Blackhawks made that kind of decision on Hasek once, but that's okay. He's not Hasek, but I'm just saying.
Right. But if you look at it, the central theme of these struggling teams is goaltending. I mean, Toronto. If Toronto had been getting above average goaltending out of Reimer and Bernier, they wouldn't be 1-5-2. Reimer was hideous last night against Arizona. He let in a goal by Klaus Dalbach that
sounds like a bad guy in the Sound of Music.
Yeah, he sounds like he was Hans Gruber's partner in Die Hard 1. But yeah, I mean he was like far away from the post. I mean, he didn't have the angle. It was a horrific goal, and that was a goal that made it 3-1, and so basically took the or 4-1, took the air out of any opportunity of the Leafs for a long time before they made their third period comeback. So you've got all these teams that have goaltending problems, and the question is whether they can solve that problem in season. The only goaltender, Russ, I see out there that somebody might consider an upgrade might be Cam Ward if they think Cam Ward can stay healthy.
And it's a big salary. I mean, that's the other problem with Cam Ward. He's
Right.
got at least 1 more year, maybe 2 more years of a big salary.
Yeah, I mean, Dan, Halak is back. Apparently he's healthy. And Dog agrees that he's healthy. Now, if he goes down again, the Islanders are probably in that same situation
No,
too.
stop! I wish people would stop saying that. They are not.
You think Thomas Greiss could carry the load?
He's been fantastic so far. He really has. I mean, I just don't get it. Obviously, if Halak was out for the year, let's say he was out for the year, they'd probably want to add a veteran goalie. But right now, Greiss has been the best backup goalie I have seen in years for this team. He single-handedly won that game in St. Louis.
Well, okay. I've seen Greiss play a number of places. I mean, he's a good backup. He was a good backup in San Jose. I think he was in Phoenix for a while. He did pretty decently as a backup in Pittsburgh.
If Halak's out for a week here or a week there, I think they're fine. Obviously, if Halak was out and had a season-ending injury, they would want a goalie.
Well,
Yeah.
no, I'm talking something like Leonard. I'm talking 6, 8, 10 weeks. I'm talking a significant portion of the season.
If there was, yes, they would probably want another veteran backup guy. You could make the argument that they would go get a Cam Ward because he's in his walk year. And they can afford to take that contract on.
Now, Russ, do you think a guy like Cam Ward would be a potential fit for a team like Calgary? I mean, they have 2 UFA goaltenders. It appears Carolina.
He's a UFA, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hiller and Ramo are both UFA. So you could conceivably make a 1-for-1 and maybe Calgary throwing something in on top of that to get the deal done. But do you think Cam Ward is the type of guy who has enough in the tank that could help turn around a Calgary?
Yeah, he definitely has enough in the tank. I felt he turned a corner late last year where we were all sort of railing on him and started playing better. And I don't think he's been bad at all this year.
Good.
Is he the guy that won the Conn Smythe? No. Here's the thing. We're getting to the point with goalies where it's like the NFL with quarterbacks. And you're going to have your elite guys,
Yep.
and there's probably 3 or 4 elite guys, and then there's a little bit of a drop-off, and then you get your next batch of guys, and you put like Halak, and you probably got 6 or 7 of those guys, and then there's a huge drop-off. Huge. And it takes years to develop these goalies. And I talk to scouts all the time, and there's a lot of guesswork with goalies. More guesswork with goalies than any other position in the game. So this is a big-time problem for a lot of teams because you now not only have to have like more than one prospect goalie in your system. You literally have to have 3, and you should have 3 of a different type too. You should have one big guy, one small guy, one. I mean, just
the Islanders have 5. They have 5 goalies in their organization. They all hope one, and I think they're hoping one of them can emerge.
Right.
They have 2 big guys, they have 2 small guys, and one in between.
And that's what you have to do now. You literally, if I were in charge of a director of scouting, I'd be drafting 1 to 2 goalies every year for a number of years. I would.
In the third, between the rounds like 3 and 6, there's no reason why you shouldn't take a goalie every year.
So you're following the philosophy that some NFL teams have, where they say they should draft a quarterback every year because you never know when you're going to need one.
Right.
I mean, see, one of the concerns, and obviously I'm Toronto centric. One of the concerns about this transition, this rebuild, the reorganization that's going on right now, is to find out whether Jonathan Bernier can be a number 1 goaltender. And based on, I mean, it's only the first 8 games, but he's showing that he's not. He has not played well. He's played consistently well in 1 game, and the rest he's had, spots of brilliance, and then he's dropped off. But you look at the organization, Reimer's a UFA. He's gone at the end of the year. I don't think they're going to re-sign him. They'll probably try to trade him to a team that needs a veteran backup. They've got 2 21-year-old goaltenders in the American Hockey League, in Antoine Bibeau and Garrett Sparks. Russ, I think they're a team, and amongst a number of teams, that will be looking at that college free agent. There's always a Matt O'Connor. There's always some goaltender who comes out of his senior season and has a phenomenal year. They're going to be out there looking for the next Matt O'Connor when college free agents come available in March and April.
Yeah, no doubt. But, those guys are like 1 in 10 in making it. Again, Eric Hartzell, I'm not even sure is on a roster anymore. And nobody was hotter.
He's in the ECHL.
Yeah. Nobody was hotter than him 2 years ago. I mean, it's a big drop-off. It's hard. Not everybody's a John Gillies. It's one of those things where you get a couple of those guys, and then there's 10 or 12 or more that don't. But they're going to do that. There's no doubt. I mean, Bibeau's good. Sparks seems like a backup. Nobody else is going to be a number 1. And Reimer, I don't even know what you could get in a trade for him anymore. They've totally devalued him in a bad way, and that's on them. Bernier will definitely be around for a while. But we'll see as the team gets better if he's just going to get too old. He's not old at all, but we don't know how many years it's going to take for the Leafs to get good. That's the thing.
Yeah, I have a feeling that when they do get good, neither Reimer or Bernier are going to be on the roster. Couple more things. I just found this curious, and me being the anti-possession stats person on the HockeyBuzzcast, I figured I'd throw this out. The Mike Babcock effect, or the anti-Mike Babcock effect, ongoing in Detroit. Since Detroit went to Jeff Blashill away from Babcock, they are now 29th in the NHL in puck possession, but they're over 500 and in the playoff race right now. The Maple Leafs are in the top 10 in puck possession, but they are in the bottom 5 of the league. Does that speak to the lack of connection between puck possession and wins? I think so.
I think goaltending has something to do with that.
Yeah, there is a big drop-off between puck possession and wins, and your eyes can see that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes it's good to know about puck possession for a line if you've already got a team that's really good in scoring or whatever, and maybe that's the little thing, the little tweak that's making the difference. Hey, when these guys are out there, they're controlling the puck a little bit more in the second period than most teams, and it's tiring them out. Those are a few things you could put together and say that's useful, or even for a player that you might want to pick up. The Rangers did that with Pouliot a few years ago. No question about it. All that said, after that, you're going to have stats like that. And then those guys, those analytics guys, are going to basically say it's either an anomaly or they're going to ignore it.
Well, I think the thing is, too, like I was talking before about Grabowski, Nelson, and then Kuhlman or Lee about their possession line, their possession stats are off the charts, but they're in a support role. So when you have something like that in a support role to complement the Tavares and the Stromes, and then you have so you don't even, it's like, okay, they turn the puck over, they can knock that off. They don't always have the puck, but when you have support with lines that aren't playing in their own end, that makes a nice team.
Right. I mean,
like
look,
Vin Scully always said about analytics, it's like a drunk guy in a lamppost. You use it as support.
Right. I mean, look, if you go back to the old days, how much did Pavel Bure have the puck?
He never had that. He had the puck maybe 7 seconds a game, but he'd have 3 goals.
Right.
Whereas Maxim Afinogenov carried the puck and skated around the zone 3 times before turning it over. But so I'm sure his puck possession numbers were fantastic.
I bet you Mike Bossy's puck possession numbers weren't through the roof.
Yeah. Finally, Eck posted in his blog this morning a little snippet about a potential trade regarding Dennis Weidman and the Calgary Flames, sending him possibly to Ottawa. I don't know anything about that, but I want to talk about the general gist right now of the trade market. Traditionally, it doesn't start until American Thanksgiving, but I get the feeling, Russ, that with a number of teams starting out as badly, like Calgary, like Columbus. I've heard Cam Atkinson's name mentioned as part of the Blue Jackets looking to make a trade for a defenseman. Anaheim may be trying to make some sort of deal before they consider trading Boudreau. I'm sure Calgary is trying to shake the trees to see if there's a deal out there. I'm sure Buffalo and Toronto are out there trying to make some deals. Do you think that those trades will start before Thanksgiving? Do you think we'll see some deals?
I think you'll see a couple, but it's going to be hard. I think Columbus is definitely trying hard. But I'm going to just play devil's advocate here. Why am I trading Weidman? What am I getting from Ottawa?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, unless
he's been their best defenseman.
Right. Yeah, unless Calgary is of the mind that he's got a couple years left in his contract, and his contract is over $5 million. I've never thought that contract was a good value, but this would be the time to sell based on the fact that he had a really good year last year.
But they would wait a while on him. Like, you're not going to see a Weidman moved until the deadline, until they really know where they're at.
Right.
I don't think you're going to see him go beforehand. I don't.
Dan, I think the guys who could move are the guys who are rent-a-players, who teams feel they can get something about as much as they can get at the deadline, but trade them now. Like I keep mentioning with Toronto, with Roman Polak, they have a couple young defensemen I think they want to play. One they sent down to on a conditioning stint. He'll be back in a week. They're carrying 8 defensemen once he comes back. So I don't think they want to carry 8. I think they want to get these guys in the lineup. So I think they could move a guy like that. I think Philadelphia could move Luke Shen. I mean, there are UFAs out there and teams that want to create space. I think those guys will move. But do you think those moves will happen?
Here's the funny thing. As far as the blockbusters like the Jean Rattel deal that ruined my childhood, you can't have those trades anymore. The cap stops you from having those trades, So, it's funny. The GM can't literally walk up to the coach and say, "We're going to really shake this up, and we're going to get rid of 2 of our best players," because nobody would be able to afford it. Even if you tried to match up the salaries, it would be really hard. It would become an NBA trade, and you would be trading like 5 guys for 3 or 6 for 4, And so you will just see those secondary guys move. You will. Luke Shen, if somebody wanted Vinny LeCavier, because I'm not even sure he's playing tonight. He's yet to play this year.
Unbelievable.
It is. At this point, it's hard to believe.
You'd have to think that someone would take him if Philadelphia would eat some of that salary.
Right. If Philly said, "Hey, we'll eat 80% of it," I would think someone might give him a go.
Right.
Well, and then the question is, and I think the fit for Vinny would be with a team that is close to winning, that needs that complementary veteran.
Arizona?
A specialist.
Yeah, no, a team like St. Louis who's had injuries.
Okay.
A team like Dallas who has aspirations of making a run this year. They brought in the Stanley Cup experience with Sharp and Oduya. LeCavier, if they could get him on the cheap, have him as a third liner or as a second power play guy, as Russ said, a specialist. I think that would be a fit.
Right.
But I can't.
But they got to eat a lot, like Dan said. They do.
Yeah.
I could, and maybe this is pretty far-fetched. I could even see him as a fit if Philadelphia ate some of the money. I could see him a fit going back to Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have Brendan Morrow anymore. I'm talking about the grizzled veteran, the guy with experience. I mean, Vinny is still probably loved in Tampa Bay. Maybe he, as the final piece, as that final veteran piece they bring back, he can win the Stanley Cup like they won in '04. I mean, I don't think that's too far-fetched.
But he's got to play for someone to want him. That's the thing.
Right. Right. Yeah. How can you showcase someone if he's from the press box?
The longer he's on the shelf, the more questions that will arise about that. See, here's the thing, too. Remember, Lou Lamoriello traded Malakoff and a first. If you don't want to eat the salary, that's the way you got to eat it.
Right.
Well, there's only one team in the league right now that has the ability to eat millions of dollars of disposed salary, and that's the Toronto Maple Leafs. And right now, you've got that Nathan Horton contract. It's an extra $5.3 million, which they have not put on long-term injury. And I think they are just waiting until the trade deadline when some team who is competing, who is in contention says we just need that one player to bring in. And not that they're going to get the player from Toronto, but they might have to trade somebody off the roster to create cap room to be able to bring that player in. And the Leafs can ask for a draft pick, like you just said, Russ. They can ask for a first-round pick from some team to say, okay, we'll take that $5 million off your hands for the next 2 years.
Like hypothetically, let's say Tampa needs to make a move, and they trade, or even Columbus. Columbus doesn't have a lot of cap room. Maybe Columbus trades a Hartnell to open up cap room to make another deal, or Tampa trades a Callahan to Toronto to make it, to open up cap room.
Not even that. I'll give you an even more realistic scenario, Dan, because it will involve only money and won't involve a player off the roster. Right now, since Tampa is not at the cap, they can't put Matthias Ohlund on long-term injury.
Right.
But if they trade Matthias Ohlund, he doesn't affect anything on their team. All he is money on the books, and that's something that Toronto has, plenty to spare. They could trade Matthias Ohlund to Toronto to create almost $4 million in cap space. That would allow them to bring in that one missing piece if they think they're missing another defenseman or another forward.
You guys want DiPietro's contract? You can have that if you want.
Well, that's a buyout, right?
I know.
But that is the way you could trade the cap space. I mean, there was supposed to be that function in the CBA, and they left it out, and they might have left it out because that's the way to get around it. And you're going to see some of that. There's no question about it. But I don't think any team's cashing it in just yet. That's the problem.
No. This is going to be closer to the deadline, but in a league that Mark Savard and Chris Pronger were traded, that the creativity is out there for NHL GMs to make moves. And I don't put it past Steve Yzerman to say, okay, we need that room. We need to get some team to take Olin, and we can give a first-round pick, or we can give a second-round pick, or we can give a prospect to clear this out. And teams that are rebuilding, like Toronto, like Buffalo, they would be willing to do that. So I think that's something that we'll have to keep on the lookout for when it gets closer to the deadline.
Yep.
Okay, well, guys, great show as always. Thanks for joining once again. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Dan Petru, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.